Hello everyone, 'tis the Silly One back again for another Battletech stream, and continuing on the Arsenal set review. And I know what I said last time, and I lied. No, I didn't lie, I changed my mind. If you caught the previous stream, then you'll know that I started off, did a bit of the Arsenal history, and I reviewed the 9 mission cards that were included in the 108 cards in the Arsenal expansion. And then I said I was going to go and record a load more and release them and whatever else over a number of weeks. I started doing that. I started with the Command cards. I went through the Command cards, and an hour and a half later I was shattered and wanted to go to sleep, and I looked at it and revisited it and came to the conclusion that it's too long. So I'm going to structure this slightly differently, and try and keep them a bit shorter and a little sweeter, so to speak. So last time, as I said, I did the 9 cards that were released in Arsenal as missions: carpet bombing, castle defense, final push, fire from cover, front-loaded supply lines, nice grouping, ramming speed, steel talons, and strength of the bear. Some of which are quite good, some of which are absolutely appalling. But I think what I want to draw the attention to is the distribution. Okay, and 2 of these are clan, and 2 of these are inner sphere, and 5 of these are generic, giving 9 in total. Okay, that's fine. Okay, however, the 2 clan mission cards are 1 for Ghost Bear and 1 for Jade Falcon. Okay, Steel Talon's very good. Strength of the Bear, very is probably the most technical way I can think of discovering it. Castle Defense being generic inner sphere and applicable to all of the inner sphere factions, and the same going for final push. So you might say that the inner sphere got a slightly better deal with flexibility, although you would probably say that Jade Falcon got the best of the bunch by a long way. There is one thing I would draw your attention to, which is ramming speed, which is a generic mission. Okay, but it says choose a vehicle. Now, vehicles are tanks and hovercraft and choppers. They are not battle armour, and Clan did not get any vehicles in the Arsenal expansion. In fact, in subsequent expansions, they still didn't get any vehicles. Okay, so although this is a generic mission, you could only play it if it's inner sphere. So why the hell they didn't just slap inner sphere on it, regardless of whether it's good or bad? We're talking fairness and distribution here. Everybody getting a slice of the cake, their slice of pizza, whatever else. Whether it's a bigger one with an extra pepperoni on it, or whether it's just plain old margarita is another question. But everyone gets a slice of the cake. Everyone gets a slice of pizza. And it just seems to me that this is... It's like having a piece of meat pizza and saying to the vegan, you've got a piece of pizza. Yes, there's a generic mission, but you can't use it. So what the hell use is that? Okay. So just to try and keep the figures interesting, I'm going to have a look at the... If I can get this right, and I can't get this right. Let's filter the commands. I'm just going to look now at the generic command cards that were released in Arsenal. So these are available to everybody, okay? And when you look at them, they come basically in 3 flavours. When you sort by keyword, there are 5 resources, 2 terrains, 2 enhancements, and 4 generics. Okay. So I'm just going to deal with these in alphabetical order, noting where we are on the scales. Okay, so first up on the great list, Advanced Manufacturing Techniques. It's a 1-cost generic resource card. It has 3 armour, 3 structure, and provides logistics. And that's pretty consistent with the modified or bonused resource cards. So what do I mean by that? You have your generic support cards, your assembly, your munitions, whatever else. They are all 4/3s, 4 armor, 3 structure, and they provide one of the assets, ALMPT, assembly, munitions, politics, logistics, and tactics. Okay, so anything on top of that generally incurs a cost, and we can see that here, it costs 1. And you often find that they get 1 less armor, and that's the case here with 3 and 3. And the thing with that is that makes them a lot more vulnerable earlier in the game. You do not need 7 to kill them, you only need 6. 2 fast dashing mechs, or even a mech with 3 attack and pushing the envelope, can kill one of these, whereas that extra point, fourth point of armor to get to the magic 7 makes quite a difference. Okay, so it's weaker, it costs more. What do you get for your money? Because this is a trade-off. Okay, the fact that it provides logistics is quite nice. A lot of the larger units have logistics buyouts, so that's good. And you can tap it for a single resource, which is okay, not the best thing. Let's pull this out and have a look at it properly. Not possibly the best thing, but obviously a good thing if you want resources. And then the nice juicy goodness here, the meatballs in the batter, so to speak, is the bottom option. So 1, tap for resource, or 2, tap this and add 2 construction counters to a card under construction that has 5 construction counters on it. Or 3 counters to a card that has at least 8 construction counters on it. Okay, and you just tap it and use it. So arguably you can tap this for 2, or you can tap it for 3. Okay, which is quite strong. Okay, it's still tappable for 1 if you haven't got those in place, and you've got logistics, so it's quite useful. The kind of break points of 5 and 8 are quite interesting, because if you've got a unit with 5 on it, then tapping this gets you to 7. So the difference between a 5 cost unit and a 6 cost unit and a 7 cost unit with this in play is nothing. If you've got 5 resources, you tap this to get another one, that gets you to 6. You get a 6 cost unit out, fine. If it's got 5 counters on it, you tap this and then you get to 7. So the difference between a 6 cost mech and a 7 cost mech with this on the table is nothing, effectively. All it is the same tap, it's just you're using the top option or the bottom option. Okay. When you get to 8 counters, it takes a 9 cost unit, the same as an 11 cost unit, effectively. 10 just gets subsumed with the 3 counters. You've got too many counters, and away it goes, it gets deployed. So it is quite useful. The thing with this, though, is that it only really starts to generate value when you've got bigger units on the table, which means you're probably not going to run 6 of these in a deck, because you're not going to want it on the first 2 or 3 turns, not unless you're running something like a merchant cast deck. And to be honest, you probably don't want this. You probably want improved construction facilities if you're running merchant cast. The only caveat to that is that it's just counters. Okay, so it's not mechs or anything else, it's just counters. And there is no stipulation, even though it's advanced manufacturing techniques, what that card is. So these were used quite well in mechless decks to really bump the numbers up. Tap this to get 3 on it, pop Tira and have another go, tap it for another 3. You got 6 resources out of one of these over 2 turns is pretty strong. You know, so they was quite reasonable. It's quite good in draft because you tend to have slightly bigger mechs, and also, as I said, it provides L without actually having a buyout. It's just a straight 1. So it's got a lot going for it. It just doesn't feature as heavily because of the nature of the card. As I said, it's not going to be a turn 1 tap, put this into play, tap it to put something else out. Okay. So next up, we have airdrop supplies. Looks like a mech has been moved to the final parts of the Ice Station Zebra movie. There it is in the Antarctic, waiting for the spy plane to drop. It's a 1/2 politics buyout card, 2 armor, 6 structure, so it's quite durable. Pay a resource and tap it. Add a supply counter to airdrop supplies. Use this ability during your deploy phase. Okay, so you've got to pay 1 to put something on it. You cost a resource to put something on it. You can then tap it, but you can't do that on the same turn. It's got to be the following turn to remove a supply counter, and then you choose. Choose a mech you control and roll a die. 1 to 2, restock this card. Well, that's an epic fail, isn't it? I've paid a resource, I've put it on here, I've rolled a 1 to 2, and I lose my resource that's on here, and I restock the card, and it's the bottom of my stockpile. Okay, 3 to 6, untap that mech. 1 with 2 politics. Use this ability during a missions phase, but not during a mission. Jesus, you'd be much better off taking your risks with a bearer and then using single combat and tapping that and getting the bearer roll again, which you do. This is just okay, it's politics, I suppose. Maybe they're looking at targeting the Steiner ATP bearer deck with this. And I suppose that you can tap it more than... I mean, you can pay a resource, tap it, put a counter on it, pay a resource, tap it, put a counter on it, pay a resource, put a counter on it, and then remove a supply counter to allow you to untap. So there's no benefit in having more counters on it than that. So you probably pay so you're basically paying a resource to having a 2 in 3 chance of untapping a mech, which I suppose isn't a bad deal. But there are cards that do it much better, much more efficient, and you're not trying to replicate Veteran Pilot or anything else like this. And it costs 1 and 2 politics, and you can pay a resource, put a counter on it, and then roll a 1, and it gets scrapped, and you've lost the whole lot. It's just so much risk for not a lot of gain. I've never run it. It's rare. I've never seen anyone asking for one either. It's just no, don't play this card. Do not play this card. If you can find a decent deck to play this card with, then great. But it's going to be something incredibly convoluted in order to make it work. There you go. There's a challenge. Make a deck with 6 airdrop supplies in there and utilize that. And I doubt it'll be any good. Please surprise me though. Don't let me put you down or deter you. But if you can do that, I will bow down to your greatness from a distance. Okay. Next up, we have a similar type of card, 1 2L generic command card, and this is Command Drop. It's got quite a funky picture. These elementals being dumped out of this plane. Scrap it when it's revealed. Activate Command Drop only during battle. Okay. Choose one of your untapped mechs for every 2 construction counters above the cost of Command Drop. Each of these mechs joins the battle and receives 1 structure. Okay, so armor doesn't make any difference here. It takes 1 structure and they get to join a battle. So I suppose it works if you've just got a mech you've just constructed and it's about to go out in the patrol region at the end of your turn. You can pull that across. But really, why aren't you running a mission to do that? As soon as somebody sees this with 3 counters on it and they know you've pulled the trick once or twice, then you're going to telegraph it. Whereas a mission is so much more of a surprise. And to be honest, for 3 counters, wouldn't you rather just have another mech on the table to start with? Would you have this, or would you have your Fenris Prime or your I don't know, your Spectre or something like that? And I suspect the chances are you would have the unit. And prohibitively to this, it's got a logistics buyout. Never seen it played. Never seen it played. It's junk. Okay, Command Circuit. 2p again. It is a generic command card, although you can probably say with the politics buyout it's more angled to Inner Sphere. Not that I'm trying to dissuade you from Clan, but it struggles with Clan. Pay a resource and tap, roll a die. Use this during your deploy phase. 1 to 2, scrap it. Okay. 3 to 5, draw 1 card and make an additional deployment, which is quite reasonable. 6, draw 3 cards and make 3 additional deployments. So when you roll a 6, if you roll boxcars, then that's great. That's really strong. Where you roll a 3 to a 5, then that's okay. You're paying 1 with your resource. If you've got 1 in your hand, you can play it with the extra deployment and you're back where you started, basically, and you've drawn a card. So effectively it's tap, draw a card. It's 0-7, so no armor, 7 straight damage. You can get picked off quite quickly. It featured in 1 deck, and I think it was 1999. I think it featured in there, and there were 2 copies of it, if I remember rightly. It is a card where, if it goes well, the gods are on your side, specifically the dice gods, then it could potentially dominate a game. However, it could also fail miserably like a wet fart. Because if you just roll a 1 to 2, you just wasted a resource to scrap something. And that just is not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. Okay. Right. The first of 2 terrain cards, which have very similar names and hit the alphabetical list right next to each other. So I'm just going to refresh on these and remind myself which one's which. So this is Defensive Embankment. It's the one with the tank on it. So this is probably the one that gives you vehicles bonuses. It's a generic 1, no buyouts, quite nice. At 1 cost, is it even worth a falsified maps? Probably not. Play Defensive Embankment only on one of your regions. Activating Defensive Embankment scraps all other terrain cards in the region. The standard terrain text. Each of your vehicles gets +1 attack and +1 armor. Use this ability during a mission whose target is the region enhanced by it. Okay. So when Arsenal broke, nobody was playing Clan and everyone was playing vehicle swarms left, right and centre. +1 attack and +1 armor. Specifically the +1 attack was quite powerful because you've just given every unit you own potentially +1. The +1 armor not so much, because you still got your die roll regardless of whether it takes structure or any damage. So the armor just only survives, but the die roll still takes effect. So in 1 to 3, your vehicle's going to die. But potentially where each of your vehicles, and it's only your vehicles, +1 attack on everything, when, okay, it's a defensive mission in that respect, but you get +1 to everything, that's quite good. And it's on everything, so you don't have to be in a group. So, for example, the Fanatical Leader bonus, which applies to everything in the group, doesn't work like this. This just gives a flat 1 to everything, which is quite reasonable. Then they limited decks to 10 vehicles. And do you put this card in to give 10 cards in your deck +1 and +1 armor? Or even if the armor is ineffective? And the answer is very, very simply no. So it went by the wayside quite quickly. Okay. Desert Wasteland. Another terrain. Command enhancement terrain. 1 cost again. Standard, play it, and then remove all of the terrain's wording. Each vehicle receives 1 damage. Damage from a mech's overheat option is applied to that mech's structure instead of its armor. Use this ability during a mission whose target is the region it has by it. Damage from a mech's overheat. So this is all mechs. Okay, so that's yours and theirs. So that can be quite a double-edged sword. Each vehicle gets 1 damage. Is quite nice because you force a die roll regardless. This is arguably a bit more useful against someone like Comstar. A lot of the Comstar mechs overheat as opposed to Elf Strike. And as I said, +1 to each vehicle is quite reasonable. You know, it kills off a lot of those little choppers early on. It makes them die roll. And to be honest, if you don't own a Rocky Gorge in your collection, this might be a suitable alternative, because it's a common instead of an uncommon, and you've got limited collection. But in comparison to Rocky Gorge, it pales. 1 damage versus 2 damage. 2 damage kill. The gulf there is quite vast. 2 damage kills your ubiquitous dasher and a lot of your VTOLs and other things along the way, as well as making the die roll. So it kind of gets overshadowed by Gorge in that respect. Or if you saw my game against Chester the other week, the DSR one, I think it was DSR, the Deep Lake combo one for overheat options is much more viable when you link it with other cards. Okay. Diamond Wills. Yeah, the card players. I don't know. I get this. This is the kind of scene that probably should have been in Solo, the Star Wars movie, and the guy who shaved his head and had a tattoo instead. Fair enough. Although the guy's got quite a respectable beard, I must say. Straight one, command and resource. It's generic, so anybody can play it, as these all are. Tap 2 resources to roll a dice during your deploy phase. 1, scrap Diamond Wills. Yep, the worst option. 2 to 5, gain a number of resources equal to the die roll. Okay, that's not bad. Probably stand a good chance of being in a net positive here. And 6, once a turn, you may activate a card ignoring its base construction costs. So you have to read this card carefully, because as soon as people read that, they think, right, I'll put a Daishi down and roll a 6 and then I get it out for nothing. The answer is yes and no. The base cost is the cost of the Daishi. This card does not ignore any asset buyouts. Any A, L, M, P or T additional buyouts on that card are not ignored by this. Okay, and then that's why when Travis did his Big Mech Bonanza event, everybody was trying Diamond Wills and running weapons depots, 4 weapons depots and a load of assembly just to cover the cost of the Daishi, whilst they tried to die roll a 6 left, right and centre and use all the resources up. I think on average your die roll from a 6 is 3.5, so paying 2 to get 3.5, you're up 1.5. Okay, you can't have a half a resource, so do you call it a 4? Do you call it a 3? Probably fair to call it a 3. You probably get 1 resource extra from using this card on average. Okay. Obviously, the huge boon here is rolling a 6. And if that mech, like, for example, a Mad Cat A, hasn't got any buyouts on it, then, hey, that's great. That really is great. But it's all luck, and you're onto the gods of the dice and sacrificing chickens to them and seeing and hoping that they look down upon you favourably. Okay, so you can have some fun with it, but it's never going to win. Okay, enhanced IR sensors, 0-3T, command enhancement, play IR sensors only on a mech. That mech can attack or block any mech with overheat regardless of other mech's speed. Okay, so any mech with overheat you can block. Right. Why am I even putting this on a table? Wouldn't I just rather have a fast mech that can block anything, regardless of whether it's got overheat or not? I suppose the only thing you can say is I can block something faster than me if I've got a big fat slow. And you've got a medium or moderate mech with with an overheat. And not a lot of them have when you look at it. It's junk. It really is junk. In fact, I seem to recall I put this in my worst deck and got Chester to play with it, and he didn't even sideboard it in because it's that bad. Why not just have a fast mech? So much better. Ferrofibrous upgrade. Okay, 0 to L, command enhancement, play it on a vehicle. If the vehicle enhanced by that receives damage, prevent 3 of it to the vehicle and scrap Ferrofibrous upgrade. You can deploy it revealed to make an additional deployment and draw a card. Okay, so free deployment and draw a card basically helps you to cycle your deck. That's really strong and really powerful. Prevent 3 of that damage, fine, but if the damage, the vehicle still gets to roll, why isn't it scrap ferrous fibre armour and don't do a die roll? I don't know. That would be so much better. I think I did a stream on Beaker's free deploy swarm, and this was in the deck. And basically, it was in the deck because it gave you a deployment and a draw. But there was no other benefit. There was no reason for it being in the deck. The prevent 3 was completely meaningless in that respect. It was purely there to cycle cards. Yeah, and with mechs going, with vehicles going to 10 per deck, this became binder fodder. Okay, resource broker. Now I've done a stream on this one because people in the Travis community thought this was broken. It's not broken. It's quite powerful if you get it out on turn 1, which means you have to play logistics. You play logistics turn 1, tap that to put 1 on this, put this out, tap it and put 3 counters on it. And that's the first option. Tap, put 3 investment counters on resource broker, use it during your deploy phase. Tap, remove any number of investment counters from resource broker and put an equal number of construction counters on any card under construction region. Show the card to all players. So basically you tap it to put counters on it, the next turn you tap it to take them off and stick them on something else. So it's quite aptly named resource broker. I mean, the other thing you could just call this is counter bank, or whatever else. It has its weaknesses at 3 and 3 because obviously with 3 counters on it, your opponent attacks it and you lose your 3 counters. Second into that, you've got to attribute the cost of it because it costs you 1 to start with, and then you tap it for 3. And if that was a resource, you could have also tapped that for another 1. So it doesn't actually gain you as much as you think you are going to gain when you actually have it on there instead of another resource. The benefit here is that if you're reasonably secure, and by that I mean it's not going to get attacked, you can stick it there for 2 or 3 turns and build up the counter levels on it. But in that respect, you're probably dominating the game, and what are you going to use the counters for? Probably to put something bigger out or a couple of mechs. And at that point, because you've won the game, it's probably just, in that respect, a bit more of a win more card. So I think with the way the game is, there are better options. You might decide that you would put this in place. It's an interesting comparison to look at resource broker versus advanced manufacturing techniques. I think I tend to favour AMT because of the logistics, but certainly you can make a case for either of them as probably your second string resource generation tool after improved construction facilities. Okay. Right. The rare unlikely love affair, 1 cost. And this was quite widely liked and also featured in a number of sideboards. Okay. It says scrap unlikely love affair when it's revealed. Choose any unique command card in play and restock it in its owner's deck. Draw a card when you activate it. Okay, so it doesn't have to necessarily be a personality. Yes, we can have the whole of the Steiner High Command having an unlikely love affair with somebody, which sounds like a mech warrior orgy, or any other unique command card to boot. Most of them are personalities, I would say. But that includes our wonderful pilots. They are command pilots. So this allows you to take a pilot and stick it back in the owner's deck. And the obvious candidates for this are Kai, Champion of Solaris, and Prince Victor Steiner Tavian, the two big pilots. Maybe with the advent of Crusade, you might say Aris Sung is in there. So that's quite powerful. Obviously, there are ways of shuffling that deck, but sticking them in the bottom is at the bottom of the stockpile. He's a two-fingered salute. Bugger off and go and do something else, you guys. So these are quite popular when it comes to sideboard. There's no way they're going to make the main deck because it's reliant on your opponent having a unique command card. If they haven't got any, it's worthless. However, a couple in a sideboard to pull them out and utilise or do something with that when you need to is actually quite good. Never a main deck card, always a sideboard. Okay. Right. The Wonderful War Funds. And it is a wonderful card. People say it's broken. And there are lots of arguments around that. What I'd like is if you tell me it's broken, is why it's broken, or is it just a good card and a generic card, which means everybody can use it, that the majority of people run it or everybody runs it. And in order to look at why that's the case, you have to actually see how this card works. Tap for a resource. Fine. I've paid 1 for it. It's a resource card. I tap it. I get my resource back. That's not bad. However, the next bit changes that. Scrap war funds. Search your stockpile for any resource card. And by that means any card with the resource keyword. So our wonderful Command Circuit and Diamond Wheels could be pulled. You can even pull the Jade Falcon High Command with this because it has the resource keyword. Okay, and deploy it. Okay, deploy it, not activate it. It doesn't count as a deployment. Shuffle your stockpile afterwards. Use this ability during your deploy phase. Okay, so timing is a point here. You can tap war funds for a counter. You have to put the counter somewhere. Okay, you can't leave it floating in the air. Scrap war funds. Go and find an advanced manufacturing techniques, deploy that and put the counter on the AMT. Doesn't work. Tap it for the resource, spend the resource on something, or lose it, which is pretty poor really. Go and get a card with the resource keyword, put that, or deploy it, and then pay the costs of it afterwards. Okay, so it doesn't give you a resource for free. You have, unless it's a zero cost resource, you have to pay the costs of it. It allows you to fish through your deck to find the resource you need. So if you're playing AMT and you haven't got a munitions or a tactics or an assembly, you can use one of these and go and get it. And the reason that is good is that allows you to pull any of those resources. So that's any of the resources that you happen to be short. The chances are that you've got one of the other ones in play. So what people did was, if they were running, let's just say they ran 9 assemblies, 7 tactics, 5 politics. Okay, so that's 9 assemblies, 7 tactics, that's 16. 5 politics gets you to 21. They probably ran 2 black markets and a think tank, something like that. Okay, so what people would then do is they would scrap the think tank, because you would use the think tank to scrap for whichever one you didn't draw. Okay, and then they would take off 1 assembly, 1 munition, one politics, 1 tactics, whatever else it is, and they would run 4 war funds. So they would run something like 8 assembly, 6 tactics, 4 politics, 4 war funds, 2 black market connections. That is a pretty standard 3 asset distribution where you get your reliability, you're going to get 1 of your resources or 2 of your resources early on, and then when you struggle to find the 3rd one, when you need it, you go and use war funds to go and pull what you want, or go and pull your black market. Okay, and the reason this card is so strong is that it's generic, and you can do that with practically any resource mix. Okay, you probably don't want to do it with 4 resources, but you can do it with 2 resources, you can do it with 3 resources. 1 resource probably doesn't make any sense, but there aren't any real single resource decks out there. So what this did was this gave you reliability and reduced the resource stroke asset screw that often happened. And that was quite a frustrating part of the game, you know. I've got a load of mechs in my hand that have got munitions, I haven't got one at the table. Oh, damn, I don't want to pay 4 extra for my Pouncer Prime or whatever else it is because I haven't got munitions in there. Give myself and give my deck a lot more reliability. And that's why it's strong. You know, I know that in Travis's version, he scraps this for a basic resource, which I don't think it works. And the reason I don't think it works is that the other side of this is being able to go and get your Solaris contacts, going to get your black market. And if you remove that element, then do you want to run war funds? Well, aren't you just better off trusting to the draw luck and playing an additional basic assembly, etc, etc, etc? Whereas the other option would be potentially to tap for a resource, tap to scrap it. And that limits the ramp effect that you get. So let me explain that. You pay 1 for a war funds, you tap it for your resource, you get the same resource back that you've just spent. And then if you go and get another additional basic resource, and you can tap that for another 1, effectively you've generated 2 resources for 1 deployment from a card that's only tapped for a resource. So it gives you a ramping effect. And again, this might be worth going back to some of my other streams where is war funds actually that good? And actually you come to the conclusion, yes, it is very good. And B, what it shows is that think tank is actually quite poor, because what you pay for your think tank and tap to get your resource of your choice to the end of the game, you lose out in resources from being able to tap the think tank, and that can be quite a lot. That's quite a stall, whereas war funds gives you a ramping up of resources effect. As it is, I think it's fine. If you put tap to scrap from it, I think that's okay. I think it nerfs it slightly. It stops the ramp, and that's arguably one of the big benefits. I think if you remove the resource keyword and just limit it to basic resources, you've neutered it to the extent that there's no real reason to run it. But you know, that's my opinion. Okay, finally, the card I was talking about when it came to Diamond Wheels, Weapons Depot. It's a 1 cost. It provides L and M. That's quite nice, both logistics and munitions. You can tap it for a resource. It has no other benefits, and it's a 3 and a 3, which means it's mech fodder. And as soon as somebody puts one of these on the table, you might as well put a large dot on it with a laser sight and say, this is a target. Because why is my opponent running this to give him L and M? Is he struggling with his resource distribution? Is he trying to just put this in play because he wants a little bit of L or a little bit of M. There's a little bit in the deck. There's a couple of cards that require it, and he doesn't want to run a think tank. He'd rather run one of those assets with a little extra. And you might as well just say, here's my weak spot. Come and spank it. Come and hit it, and do your worst for it. It paints a target. So there you go. There's the distribution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we will put commands. Oh, I can't spell. And there are 13 generic commands. Let's just put that into there so we know what's going on. So I'm going to start and fill these up as we go along, and catch those up and stuff. So let me just close that down, or pull that around for next time. So there are another 13 cards out of the way. I'm up to 22 cards of the Arsenal review. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. We will see. It will depend on time. It might be short and sweet. We shall see. It might be mechs. It might be clans. It might be commands. I'll have a look at it. But I'm going to break them all out into little chunks and do them when I get the time. So that's me. I'm done. Stick a fork in me. Look after yourselves, because it's not great out there at the moment. And I'll see you on another day for another Battletech stream. Take care.